Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or perhaps good evening or even good morning if you're joining us from the other side of the world. Welcome to this EU COP26 side event on sustainability reporting and EU sustainability reporting standards and the future of sustainability. We have a very interesting program. We will start with a short address by Commissioner Mairead McGuinness, following which we will have a presentation by Patrick de Cambourg, and then a series of question and answer sessions, including, we hope, leaving enough time towards the end to take questions from the audience. So we will start with an address from Commissioner McGuinness, and I will hand over the floor now to the Commissioner.
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The big topic on yesterday's agenda at COP26 was finance, how to mobilise public and private finance flows at scale for climate mitigation and adaptation. I hope it sparked important conversations in the financial world and strengthened our resolve to act together and to act fast to address the climate crisis. Given the central role of finance to the green transition, we need to keep the conversation going. We need to make some big changes over the coming years, and we need to make sure everyone is on board. So I'm very pleased to kick off this discussion on sustainability reporting standards in the European Union and the future of sustainability reporting. As you know, the EU is firmly committed to becoming a sustainable economy. The way we get there is set out in the European Green Deal. It aims to make the European Union climate neutral by 2050. By supporting green jobs, green growth and green investment. For finance to play its full part in the sustainable transition, we need complete, comparable and reliable sustainability information from companies. Now here is where the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, or CSRD for short, comes in. The CSRD will strengthen sustainability reporting rules for companies, meeting the information needs of market participants and other stakeholders. With this proposal, we've taken a comprehensive approach to the disclosure of sustainability information. It will require more companies to report sustainability information, introduce an audit requirement, promote the digitalisation of sustainability information, and make EU reporting standards mandatory. I'd like to take a moment to focus on EU sustainability reporting standards, the most important element of the CSRD proposal. The development of EU standards should provide a cost-effective solution for reporting companies. The current situation of multiple standards and expectations is costly and confusing and inefficient. The draft standards which companies will have to report on will be developed by the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, EFRAG. The Commission will adopt the standards as supplementary, secondary legislation, so-called delegated acts, after consulting with the other EU institutions. These EU standards will be consistent with our political ambition and with our existing framework for sustainable finance. From the beginning, they will cover all ESG topics, including climate. Our standards will align closely with other key parts of the EU sustainable finance strategy. The standards will knit together with the EU taxonomy, our classification system for identifying sustainable economic activities. EU corporate reporting standards must also take into account the disclosure requirements already in place under the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, which requires the financial sector to report on its contribution to the sustainability agenda. Taken together with the CSRD, these will enable the consistent flow of sustainability information throughout the financial value chain, from companies to end investors. By design, our standards will cover climate and other sustainability risks for companies, as well as the impact companies have on people and the environment. In other words, they will integrate both materiality perspectives, what the IFRS Foundation has called enterprise value creation on the one hand, and an account of a company's impact on people and the environment on the other. And let's be clear, this is the information that financial markets want and need. And by financial markets, I mean global financial markets. It's clear that the European Union cannot tackle the climate crisis by acting alone. Indeed, that is why the EU is fully engaged and ambitious for COP26. I note that our UK hosts for COP26 are taking a similar approach to sustainability reporting, acknowledging the need both for reporting on enterprise value creation and for reporting on impacts, the double materiality concept. The EU wants to make sure our standards are closely aligned with global standards, and this is something we are fully committed to on sustainability reporting. We welcome the IFRS Foundation initiative to develop a common global baseline on sustainability reporting. But we believe that global standards should be a common floor, not a ceiling that limits those that want to go further and faster. Global processes should be flexible enough to accommodate the need for different countries and jurisdictions to go further according to their own rules and priorities. So, two-way cooperation between global and regional standard setters is critical. We need to ensure coherence between frameworks. EFRAG has already established close technical cooperation with the Global Reporting Initiative and with the IFRS Foundation, amongst others, and this is important. There is already a lot of common ground. For example, we have taken care to integrate all the key concepts of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure recommendations into our legislative proposal. Today's event is a great opportunity to broaden and deepen the conversation about the interaction between global and local initiatives. EU standards will build on and contribute to global standardisation initiatives. We should build on what exists and seek as much alignment as possible, while also meeting Europe's ambitious goals. So thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think that has been a very good and broad introduction to the topic. And with that, I will now turn towards Patrick de Cambourg, who I'm sure is well known to many of you as the chairman of the project task force that is working on these European sustainability reporting standards, or at least preparing the ground for those standards under the umbrella of the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group. So Patrick, you have the floor now to introduce the work that you're carrying out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alain. And thank you for this opportunity to present the work EFRAG is carrying out at the request of the Commission to elaborate standards that could be adopted, as it has been mentioned, by way of delegated acts in due course, and as a consequence would become mandatory in the Union. Slide 2, please. In the context of COP26, I would like to highlight 3 messages. 1, robust reporting on climate is a key element of an EU comprehensive and mandatory sustainability reporting regime. 2, the climate standard prototype working paper issued by EFRAG early September is an initial but important step towards high quality climate reporting. And 3, the EFRAG standard setting approach is designed to be fully compatible with international initiatives, while of course onboarding the EU objectives and goals. Let me elaborate further on these 3 points. First message, the EU is establishing a comprehensive and mandatory sustainability reporting landscape. What is the starting point? The success of sustainability public policies, of sustainability business strategies, and of sustainable finance does require robust sustainability data. Green or ESG washing is not an option. This is why the Commission tabled in April a revised directive, the CSRD, which is currently following the legislative process in the EU. The CSRD organizes a game-changing step in sustainability reporting. Slide 3, please. In a nutshell, the features are a comprehensive coverage of sustainability matters, environment, including climate, of course, social and governance. A coverage, a reporting required from all large companies, 50,000 entities in the Union, under a mandatory regime. I insist because this is a major feature and a major change. Reporting prepared on the basis of standards, fostering proper quality of information, in a similar status as the one reached by financial reporting, i.e. relevance, faithful representation, comparability, and reliability. Reporting addressing the needs and expectations of all stakeholders under the concept of double materiality, which Commissioner McGuinness mentioned, and a reporting located in the management report, possibly under the caption of sustainability statements, audited and able to be digitized. And also all of this in a tight timeline, since the first reporting would be expected in 2024 with reference to reporting year 2023. Under this legislative process, EFRAG is developing standards following a comprehensive architecture, often described as the rules of three. Slide 4, please. 3 layers of reporting: sector agnostic for maximum comparability, sector specific for maximum relevance, and entity specific for additional flexibility, relevance, and responsibility. 3 reporting areas: strategy and governance, implementation, and performance measurement. By the way, totally compatible with the TCFD approach in terms of content. And 3 topics, as mentioned already: E, environment, S, social, and G, governance. All the above presented under an appropriate structure, which we propose to call the sustainability statements, to be the counterpart of financial statements. As we speak, the task force is working hard under a thorough due process to deliver on time, together with the governing bodies of the sustainability reporting pillar of EFRAG that should be up and running at the end of March, a first set of standards reflecting this architecture. Second message, slide 6, please. The climate standard prototype working paper is a step towards a robust climate reporting. 6, please. Oh, okay, the next one, if I may. Many businesses state that they intend to comply with the TCFD framework and are therefore moving ahead in relation to climate mitigation and climate adaptation and the related reporting. What does this mean in terms of reporting in an EU context? The working paper tries to answer this question. Please bear in mind that this working paper will evolve to reach the stage of a pre-exposure draft in December, at which point it will be subject to public consultation. The goal has been and is to comply with the EU agenda and policies and the TCFD framework while meeting fully the criteria for high quality information, in particular, as already mentioned, relevance, faithfulness, and comparability. Allocation of disclosure requirements over the successive sets of standards remains to be finalized. At this stage of our standard setting process, our team has tried, 1, to address all relevant aspects of robust climate reporting: governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. And 2, to cover the relevant subtopics via detailed and therefore comparable performance metrics: energy, greenhouse gas emissions in absolute and intensity terms under scopes 1, 2, and 3, targets and transition plans in alignment with the Paris Agreement, EU taxonomy disclosures, financial risks, and opportunities. All in all, subject to the enhancement, consensus building, and fine-tuning underway, our team believes it is a viable and a relevant way forward to demonstrate for reporting entities to demonstrate the level of commitment in relation to both the TCFD framework and the EU policies. Last but not least, the third message: the EU commitment on contribution to international compatibility. Slide 7. Well, next slide. This is a clear goal for EFRAG since the beginning. It is an EU tradition and commitment not to work in isolation. It was mentioned from the start in January 2020 by Executive Vice President Dombrovskis. It is well developed in our preparatory work report of March 2021, where we suggest that the ways and means to foster co-construction spirit by building on and contributing to international initiatives. It was discussed with major international initiatives as early as December 2020 and March 2021. The task force has now effective statements of cooperation or extensive discussion with those initiatives. It is finally a cornerstone of our climate standard prototype working paper, as I will explain now. Where do we stand as of today in terms of compatibility? Next slide, please. As illustrated in the slide, we assess the following at this stage. Sorry, it's a bit complex. The working paper is in complete alignment with the draft CSRD, the EU policies, and the underlying criteria of quality. The working paper is also fully compatible with the TCFD framework. These are the two key references we are working from. Through our fruitful cooperation with GRI, we are making sure we are onboarding most, if not all, climate-related GRI disclosures, which are TCFD compatible too. Following regular discussions with the IFRS Foundation's Technical Readiness Working Group, we believe that we are compatible with their principle-based prototype, to the elaboration of which the TCFD team contributed. And finally, we've had a careful look at the sector-specific approach developed by SASB and its onboarding into the TRWG prototype. We believe that 2/3 of these metrics are captured in our sector-agnostic prototype, many of them because we make certain disclosures mandatory for all sectors instead of a number of sectors, for instance, greenhouse gas emissions. And the other third will be introduced via our sector-specific standards without much difficulty. When finalizing the working paper to move to the pre-exposure draft stage, we will make adjustments when needed in a compatibility perspective, bearing in mind that in the EU, details of disclosure are key to ensure comparability and success of public and private policies. Thank you, Alain.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you for a very comprehensive presentation of your work. And indeed, there is a great deal of work being done in EFRAG under considerable time pressure. And from our side, we're very grateful to you and to the entire task force and many other people who are working with the task force for the excellent work that you're doing. So I'll move now to introduce the panel. I'll go in alphabetical order. So I'll start with Rosanna Fusco, who is the head of climate change strategy at ENI in Italy. And Rosanna is also a member of the task force on climate-related financial disclosures. Secondly, we have Judy Kuszewski, who is the chair of the Global Sustainability Standards Board at the Global Reporting Initiative. And thirdly, we have Michel Madelin, who is a trustee of the IFRS Foundation. And Michel, as we were chatting before the start of the event, has been a very busy man in the last few days, given the very important announcements that the foundation has made indeed yesterday about the creation of the International Sustainability Standards Board. So thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. As I said, we will proceed by rounds of questions. I will start with the first round of questions, in which we'll try to focus on process and the interaction between the global level and the jurisdictional level, which is, I think, a question that many people often ask us in terms of to try to understand how that works. So maybe, Judy, we can perhaps start with you. From the GRI side, you're long established. GRI standards are quite widely used, probably the most widely used set of standards on sustainability reporting. So can you tell us a little bit about how you see your cooperation with EFRAG and what can you bring to EFRAG? What does EFRAG bring to you? What can EFRAG bring to the GRI? And how can you promote then also this process of convergence, in which, of course, the ISSB also plays a crucial role?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here representing the GSSB and the GRI at this important event. I'd like to congratulate EFRAG and the Commission for spearheading this really very important initiative, which will help to drive change towards a sustainable economy. GRI is indeed the leading standard setter on sustainability reporting, but our vision doesn't stop there. We believe in a comprehensive corporate reporting regime comprising both financial reporting and sustainability reporting on equal footing. So the CSRD, under the organizational stewardship of EFRAG, will be instrumental in moving this vision much closer to reality. Our collaboration with EFRAG embodies this shared ambition with a commitment to co-creation of reporting standards that have both European and global reach and relevance. So specifically, what GRI offers this cooperation: firstly, we offer capacity and expertise developed over more than 20 years of standard setting. GRI's existing global sustainability reporting standards are used by over 10,000 organizations annually and are referenced in scores of policy instruments and listing requirements. And second, we offer proven content on almost all of the ESG topics the EU has identified in the CSRD, based on our multi-stakeholder governance, firmly rooted in the public interest, and authoritative intergovernmental instruments on responsible business conduct. This will support EFRAG's efforts to adopt the best of what is already established and proven in practice. And thirdly, we offer an opportunity to consider the content of the European standards in the future versions of the global standards from GRI, which we very much look forward to doing. Additionally, really alongside the output of the ISSB in the fullness of time as well, we see this as part of a sort of a continuum of collaboration. And what EFRAG we see offering this cooperation is, first, a route to mandatory reporting in one of the largest and most important global markets. This will greatly increase the consistency, comparability, and accountability of reporting among relevant companies. Also, I think it's important to appreciate that these standards will not just produce reporting for the sake of reports. As Commissioner McGuinness pointed out a few moments ago, EFRAG's efforts will link to the broader EU policy context, which enables faster, more efficient, more appropriate decision-making to support sustainability, performance, and outcomes. Now, second, I think EFRAG are really showing leadership by spearheading the double materiality concept, which really brings us to the essential future vision in which financial reporting and sustainability reporting can sit side by side in a meaningful way. EFRAG are really the only ones doing that so far. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Judy. And I will turn now to Michel. As I said, Michel, and as everybody I hope knows, the IFRS Foundation has made some very significant announcements. Yesterday, we heard Erkki Liikanen in Glasgow announcing the creation of the International Sustainability Standards Board. As Commissioner McGuinness said, this is something from our side we fully support, and we're fully engaged in that, including through the monitoring board. But how do you see this developing in terms of the cooperation between the international level and the jurisdictional level, Michel? How do you think that can be organized? I believe that it is something that was foreseen in Erkki's announcements. Is there anything more that you can say about this?
Yes, thank you, Alain. First, I want to thank you for being part of this panel and having the opportunity to be with you this evening. But you know, you mentioned one of the announcements that were made yesterday. There were two others that were also important. One was the commitment to merge with two important standard setters, CDSB and the Value Reporting Foundation, which are bringing a lot of capacity and intellectual property to this new board, and also the fact that we have actually produced two important prototype basically that provides some vision of where standards, what standards from the new board will be. But in terms of your specific question, I think I'd like to make a distinction between what has happened to date and what we expect to happen going forward. And what I'm going to say are really my own views. They may not be the views of the foundation, and I want to make sure that they are interpreted in this way. I think in terms of what has happened to date, really, I would say that there were two tracks that were followed. One was really an engagement with jurisdiction on consultation and discussion about the possible establishment of the board itself. And that was obviously an important set of discussion. And the second was really the engagement on the content and the architecture of future standards and the work that this technical readiness working group has been able to do. And just to give you some background, this group was really set up in response to a call from IOSCO, actually, for greater coordination and consistency in this field. So this is actually in that context that we had a number of contact and exchange with IFRAG, as was mentioned earlier by Patrick. This group also had benefited from the engagement of technical experts, provided through IOSCO with a representation of national securities regulator. And the objective there were really to ensure that this prototype, along with the other deliverable, were fit for purpose, basically, in meeting the core information needs of global capital markets. So that was really sort of what has happened to date. Now, if we want to look forward, I think that as the ISSB is being set up, this engagement with individual jurisdiction, which we all believe is really critical to the development and the adoption of a global baseline, will have to take place at several levels in a more structured and formalized process. And I would really sort of distinguish first and foremost two channels. The first one is obviously the standard setting process itself and the various options and mechanisms available for engagement. And second, we also announced that we would form a platform for engagement of jurisdiction, similar to what we have on the ISB board, which is called the Accounting Standards Advisory Forum, which is really designed to host and discussion and engagement with national jurisdiction. So that's sort of one set of channels. And then we obviously have others, which include the participation of public authorities in the monitoring board, as you know, Alain, and also the participation of individual jurisdiction in respective instance of the ISSB and the foundation. So there's a number of channels that will be available to make sure that we have a robust and very productive engagement. One thing I'd like to stress, however, or at least note, is that while it's important to recognize the leadership, the thought leadership and the commitment of Europe, it would be important for us also to bring to the table a number of relevant and important jurisdictions, and we have to do that in a multilateral process in order to really be able to develop a truly global baseline, which will drive international consistency. And also, as we have emphasized in our communication, to take consideration for the needs and specificities of developing and emerging economies. So we need to find a balance in that mechanism between the various contributions, but I would emphasize and again stress the importance of that engagement and something we need to build in a robust way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel, and certainly we would fully concur with that from our side of the Commission, that that engagement is absolutely essential. So thank you for that very, very, again, very comprehensive answer. I'll turn now to Rosanna, who is here as I guess a bit of a victim, since you are representing a preparer and all of this stuff is going to fall on your shoulders. You are a European company, so you're going to be reporting according to European legal requirements, but you also operate internationally. And that is a situation in which many large European companies find themselves. So how do you see this interaction between global and international requirements from your point of view as a preparer, and what challenges did that raise for you?
Okay, thank you, Alain, for first of all to invite me to this important roundtable. Let me say that in the past few years, the growing demand for climate-related financial and non-financial information, with the absence of a globally agreed disclosure standard, has led to a proliferation of reporting requirements and consequently a fragmentation in multinational companies' disclosure. To date, the harmonization of climate-related reporting by laws by any among them. Indeed, the proliferation of standards featuring different disclosure requirements, metrics, methodologies, jeopardizing, let me say, preparedness ability to provide useful information to represent business performance and inform properly the user's decision. In our view, for example, talking about climate change, the best solution is the development of a common baseline in order to increase effectiveness, comparability, and credibility of the contribution of the private sector to the fight against climate change, as well as a decisive tool to quantify the financial risk and opportunity for business in a logic of transition towards a net zero economy. So in this context, any supports the call for setting a globally consistent minimum standard that would enhance the comparability of non-financial performances among companies and in different countries, of course. The creation of this framework should be regarded as a bold initiative to overcome the fragmentation of disclosure requirements, and to some extent to avoid, let me say, the risk of overly conservative position of some companies regarding the materiality of the information. The framework should have a concise approach to facilitate the inclusion of such information in the financial annual reports. This globally consistent and economic-wide disclosure standard will represent the baseline for international sustainability and climate-related disclosure to be integrated with subsequent sector-specific guidance. To conclude, from our view, a multi-stakeholder dialogue between institutions, data users, data preparers, and the supervisory body is essential to valorize what has been built so far and to develop this minimum global framework in a way that can be easily incorporated into existing legislation in different jurisdictions. In our opinion, European policymakers are working well, should considering the close cooperation with some of the most relevant ongoing standard setting initiative for sustainability and climate reporting.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. And when I said you were a victim, I didn't mean you personally, of course. I mean you as a representative of a preparer. But thank you very much for that. And finally, in this first round, I'll turn to Patrick de Cambourg. I think we've already mentioned on a number of occasions that from the EU side, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to build on what already exists and on developments at international level. Can you say a little bit more about how you see that from the point of view of the project task force? What are the kind of main lessons you've drawn from your engagement with existing standard setting initiatives so far? And how is that reflected in the work that EFRAG has done so far?
I think that the key lesson we've learned is that we need to make a distinction between standards and frameworks, because at the end of the day, one of the key aspects of a good standard setting is the quality of information that will be derived from the standards. And I would like to insist upon this because, not any disclosure is relevant, and the risk of greenwashing or, ineffective communication is real. So, an information has to be relevant. So it has to be to the point. It has to be faithful. In general, faithfulness is obtained via a group of disclosures where you have a reasonable description of the phenomenon you are trying to approach. And then it needs to be comparable. So one of the lessons we've learned is that we need to drill down into details. Because at the end of the day, and I personally struggle a little bit sometimes against too many narrative disclosures, because narrative disclosures are difficult to compare. They are necessary, but we are promoting the idea of adding also milestones when you have a narrative disclosure, certain points which you need to cover via multiple choice question or that sort of thing in order to give more comparability into the narrative. And of course, for the quantitative metrics that are absolutely key, you need to create the maximum comparability. So somehow we, as I briefly alluded to, a sector agnostic dimension is interesting, but also the sector specific layer. And as I illustrated, it is also interesting to see that when the sector specific approach has been followed, we in the EU are going to promote some of those disclosures at sector agnostic level in order to increase the comparability across the board. So I would insist at that stage on the key qualities for the key criteria for high quality information, because I think that failing to do so, reporters and standard setters would miss the target of establishing financial reporting and sustainability reporting on an equal footing.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'll come back to, we're going to start the second round of questions now. And here, I would like to go a little bit more into content rather than into the sort of institutional arrangements and governance and so on. And I'll perhaps come back to Rosanna to start with. Rosanna, you work for Eni, an oil and gas company, which of course, for which climate related issues may be of particular relevance. So can you tell us how you see from a preparer point of view this interplay that Patrick has also mentioned between cross-cutting reporting requirements and sectoral reporting requirements? That's one on the one hand. And then the other point is about the two different perspectives on materiality, the double materiality. Do you think that is something that is particularly difficult for your sector, for example, or how do you see that?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll try to answer saying that any involvement in the TCFD is a fundamental step of our long-term commitment to promote complete and effective disclosure on climate change and energy transition, started early in 2000s through the adhesion to the voluntary reporting framework, in particular the one promoted by CDP. In the last years, to comply with the TCFD recommendation, Eni has developed an integrated approach to non-financial disclosure, combining a comprehensive coverage of all climate-related aspects with a proactive approach to capture the specificity of each region and business sector because of our wide range of activities and presence in different countries. Indeed, we continue to be an active member of several multi-stakeholder initiatives promoted by national regulators, international institutions, and NGOs to bridge the gaps in current non-financial disclosure, especially on climate issues, and develop a common standard enhancing both comparability among companies and ensuring reliable benchmark by data users within and across sectors. So although we believe that a tailored industry standard is needed, and we need for that, we envisage 3 key actions needed to improve climate-related disclosure based on our experience. First of all, pushing across industry and the globally consistent baseline framework for climate-related disclosure, including minimum requirements, metrics, accounting methodology. And secondly, developing a specific sector guidance to tailor disclosure requests specifically on information material for company in different economic sector, also leveraging on existing sector-specific guidance. Indeed, the sectorial perspectives are the best venue based on our experience for addressing the major issues and reaching a shared solution to the most controversial aspect of the industry disclosure, which cannot be adequately discussed in cross-sector panels. Based on our experience in TCFD Oil and Gas Preparedness Forum, for example, some very important aspects like choice of forward-looking metrics, industry time horizon definition, scenario analysis, reference and assumption are very important to be discussed in terms of sectorial approach. Based on our experience, we consider crucial that such sector guidelines include a list of clear and insightful metrics based on clear calculation methodologies that provide companies with common and comparable indicators. The third key action in our view is the promotion of closer integration of financial and non-financial reporting, facilitating independent assurance of company disclosures. Regarding your question on materiality, we support those standards that enable company to disclose all the impact of climate change, both those caused on the company's value creation process and those generated by the company on the external environment. Therefore, we support the principle of double materiality already provided for the European Commission guidelines on non-financial reporting. However, due to the rapid evolutions of the ESG landscape, we also recommend to avoid rigid distinctions between the two materialities, taking into consideration the concept of dynamic materiality defined in the prototype of climate-related financial disclosure standard first mentioned, which highlights how sustainability topics initially relevant for the impacts caused on external environment and society by company can become either gradually or quickly material for the own value creation process of the company themselves. I hope that I have answered to your question.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. That was a very, very rich and comprehensive answer. Michelle, coming back to you, you are playing a key role not only as trustee, as in your normal job as trustee, but also as the chair of the Technical Readiness Working Group that is preparing the ground for the ISSB. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into how that group is working, and how you're thinking about the development of the architecture of the future standards of the ISSB?
Yes, thank you, Alain. But first, I'd like to put in perspective my own contribution versus, the work that went into this effort, and the, many hours spent by many people, and actually decades of experience and work that went into this. So I have to keep some humbleness or humility, in this. But I think what we've done to date is really has been really guided by the objective we were given, which was really sort of to try as much as possible to build and on the work of relevant initiative, and that's why actually we were very focused on trying to bring together basically the work of existing organization, and that's what you see in the what we've published. We really published two documents, as you know. One was related to was what we call a general requirement prototype, which was sort of similar to IS1 in terms of presentation of financial statements. And this is something that really provide what are the other requirements for disclosure to investors and how they should be structured, the content, and so on. So that was one part of what we put together. The other is really related to climate-related disclosure requirement prototype, which is something that is similar to the work that Patrick has been mentioned before. In terms of the standard and the architecture, maybe just a few sort of general comments. First is that what we're proposing basically is to require preparers to provide information related to significant sustainability matters, and not only climate, to which the reporting entities expose and that are relevant to their economic decisions, to the economic decision making and the enterprise value. This is really sort of the founding principles. One thing to be aware is that the standards will be available to IFRS accounting standards reporters as well as other gaps. So another important dimension. The third point I would mention is this around materiality. Is really, we define materiality really by reference to the factors that could reasonably be expected to influence the user's assessment of enterprise value. So we're not setting a special threshold or a definition, but that's really a very dynamic concept. And this, as you know, could include the impact on society and environment to the extent it's relevant, again, to enterprise value. The standards would be, and the disclosure would be entity specific. In terms of the boundaries, we see is, it would be the same as for financial reporting. And then last, I would say that as a sort of a general principle, connectivity is very important. In terms of the structure of the standards, we expect the entity to disclose information, again, on matters that are critical to the way the entity operates, and really organize around 4 pillars you're familiar with: governance, strategy, risk management, metrics and targets. Metrics and targets, we are really focused on 4 different dimensions: cross-industry metrics, industry-based metrics, targets set by management, as well as other KPI that are used by management to measure progress. And thematic disclosure are for topics that have a pervasive impact on enterprise value across entities, regardless of the industry. And industry disclosure requirements, those are really designed to facilitate the comparability. Another important feature of the proposed standard is that in situations where sustainability matters are not directly addressed by existing standards, we will basically encourage preparers to consider applying other materials and other standards are available to them. So that sort of gives you a bit of a broad sense of what we're trying to do. And again, what I would say is what has been very important for us is to continue to integrate and build on the work of relevant initiative in order to advance basically this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but we'll continue with the second round. But I would like to find some time at the end for questions from the audience. So very quickly, Judy, you've seen the early prototype or working document, and I think it's important to underline it's just a working document that EFRAG has published on climate reporting. How do you see that from the GRI side, and how does it compare perhaps to the approach that you would take?
Yeah, so I'd like to pay tribute to the EU for the ambition that we can see really in that climate working draft. So the scope of this paper extends beyond the existing GRI standards, but it also builds on the best practice that has been previously developed by us, but also alongside that of CDP and the TCFD, really, so global leadership organizations in the topical area of climate and organizational impact. GRI is closely involved in the further development of that working draft into the ultimate standard, and we will expect to align with the outcome of this in the next revisions to our global standards. But where the working draft differs from the GRI standards in scope, we anticipate this will be true of other drafts that are yet to be released still, is in the specific alignment it enables to the wider policy framework that is specific to Europe. This is a real benefit for reporting organizations who don't want to have different and divergent disclosure requirements for the emissions trading scheme, sustainable finance directive, and so forth, over and above their core sustainability reporting requirements. This intersection of other policy interventions alongside reporting has in general not received sufficient attention in the past, in my opinion. In fact, reporting can only be used efficiently for decision-making when it reflects the policy environment. And this approach might well become the model in other jurisdictions around the world. I think another notable aspect of the prototype, and this is the last point I'll make, is that it it gives substance to the concept of double materiality, which we've noted before is so important to this project and to achieving harmonization of reporting, and indeed making it possible for enhanced and improved financial reporting to reflect the financial materiality of sustainability impacts. In other words, only when an organization understands its impacts on the planet and people is it possible to determine which of those also affect their financial health and ability to create value. And I think that's really important in this initiative.
Thank you very much, Judy. Again, we're a little bit behind schedule, but I want to come to Patrick still in this second round. Patrick, very briefly, can you unveil a little bit on perhaps other topics that the task force is currently discussing? But as I said, very briefly, because I really would like still to have time for questions from the audience. Thank you. So
very briefly, we have, the prototype, the working paper on the climate standard prototype is the first document that we release, but there will be a similar document before the pre-exposure draft level, which would be December or early January, for all the other key topics that we are organized. We have a cluster organizations where we have one dedicated to climate, one dedicated to the other environmental subtopics, one for social, basically the workforce, and one for the other social affected communities, supply chain, and users, and we have one on governance, plus the sector-specific dimension. So maybe when I tell you this, I feel a certain level of anxiety because, of course, this is a lot, but the other clusters is progressing as we speak along the lines of what has been produced by the cluster on climate. So I hope we'll be able to offer a meaningful contribution to the standard setting in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I think we all feel a lot of anxiety given the responsibility that we've been charged with, but it's better not to show it too much and just to get on with the work. I'm sure Michel has been going through the same process recently with all the pressure that's been on the IFRS Foundation. Okay, so let's now find we still have some time for questions from the audience. And one of them that's come up, and which I think I'll turn to Michel for, is this concept of connectivity between financial information and what we used to call non-financial and now is more generally referred to as sustainability or ESG information. How are you looking at that from the IFRS Foundation's perspective, Michel?
Thank you. And I think it's a very important point, and we have had a lot of questions on this. And I think what is important to start with is that the ASB will continue to establish accounting and financial reporting standards for financial statements. And alongside, the ASB will provide a comprehensive global baseline of sustainability-related disclosure. Now, what we also are very mindful of is that we need to ensure compatibility and coordination between the work of the two boards. So actually, in the revision of the Constitution we just approved, we have set provisions that will require the board to establish procedures for working together to develop compatible standards that are complementary and avoid inconsistencies and conflicts. So this process will need to be put in place, and through our due process, we'll have to pay close attention to this. I think we expect also the two boards to identify topics where they will be working jointly. This could involve joint projects such as the management commentary or coordination on aspect of projects. So that will be part of the agenda consultation that the two boards will have to do in order to identify these topics. So that's really sort of give you a sense of, on one hand, we have two well-defined, basically, scope and range of responsibility, but at the same time, we are putting in place institutional mechanism to ensure coordination and compatibility between the work of the two organizations.
Thank you very much, Michel. I think there's very much the similar kind of reflection going on inside EFRAG, also about the making sure that the two pillars speak with each other. And it's also one of the reasons why we think that we've proposed in the Commission's legislative proposal that the sustainability information should be in the management report, so that it's possible to make that link between the two dimensions of the annual reporting package. So I think we're broadly on the same lines on that. I think we have time for one more question, maybe two, but there is one question from the audience that I think is particularly important, because we tend to speak a lot about financial markets and investors and so on, but sustainability information is relevant for a much broader range of stakeholders, and there's civil society, trade unions, NGOs. So maybe turning to Patrick. Patrick, how are these groups involved in the work of the task force, and how do you think that might develop in the future in the permanent structures that EFRAG will establish?
As regards the task force, first of all, the composition of the task force, which was decided a year ago, is reflecting this need for a multi-stakeholder approach. By the way, it's also a multi-country approach, since we have 35 members coming from all stakeholder horizons, and also from 13 member states. We have also reflected that in the Secretariat, basically organized on the basis of contributions in kind. We have about 30 full-time equivalent in our Secretariat, and they represent, you know, I hope and I think a fair allocation of influences. Of course, you can always do better, but I think that from the start we have that concern. We will be moving to a public consultation, so you know the public consultation will be extremely important, and we hope that all stakeholders will participate. I think also, but that's not my, it is under the responsibility of Jean-Paul Gauzès, but in terms of future governance at a General Assembly level, at board level, and also at technical expert group level, we take good care, I think, of a balanced representation. I should mention also that we are announcing today or tomorrow, I don't know, the establishment of expert working groups, 11 expert working groups. And I think that in the selection, the team that selected under the responsibility of Jean-Paul Gauzès, the experts has made an incredible effort to make sure that we would have a balanced representation from all stakeholders. Because you cannot have a balanced reporting addressing double materiality if you do not have if you are not involving stakeholders, and some, by the way, are silent stakeholders. So we need to find the ways involving in particular NGOs to hear the voice of the silent ones.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I've been given a number of other questions from the audience about double materiality, for example, but I have rather failed in my attempt to leave enough space for all these questions from the audience. So I apologize for that, but we would never have been able to answer all of them in any case. So I'll bring it to an end here. Thank you very much to all our panelists, and Patrick in particular for presenting the work of EFRAG. And also, of course, thank you to our Commissioner for her introductory statement. I'm sure there will be many more occasions to discuss this very important work. We will meet online. At some stage, we will meet physically again. I hope that this will be sooner rather than later. This will allow us to continue this very important work. So thank you very much to all of you, and I wish all the audience a good end of the day, and a successful continuing conference of the parties. Thank you very much.